A simple elderly woman kicked out of hotel. Then her husband buys the entire chain. Margaret Wilson clutched her worn leather purse as she approached the grand marble desk of the Grand View Hotel. The chandeliers above cast dancing shadows across the lobby floor, making her feel even smaller than usual. At 72, she had saved for months to afford this weekend in downtown Chicago for their anniversary. Her simple floral dress and sensible shoes stood in stark contrast to the designer outfits around her. The young receptionist, Ashley, barely glanced up from her computer screen as Margaret waited patiently. Other guests in tailored suits brushed past her, their expensive cologne mixing with the lobby's orchids. Margaret's weathered hands trembled slightly as she pulled out her confirmation email on her old phone. "I have a reservation under Wilson," Margaret said softly, her voice barely audible over the lobby music. Ashley's perfectly manicured nails clicked against the keyboard as she frowned at the computer screen. "I'm not seeing anything under that name," she said, her tone suggesting Margaret was wasting her time. Margaret's heart sank as she double-checked the crumpled printout she'd brought as backup documentation. "But I booked this 3 months ago. It's our 50th wedding anniversary," she explained desperately. The receptionist's expression remained unchanged, cold and dismissive of the elderly woman before her. Behind Margaret, a line of impatient guests began to form, their sighs adding to her growing anxiety. "Look, ma'am, without a valid reservation, I can't help you," Ashley said, already looking past Margaret. The security guard near the entrance shifted his weight, clearly preparing to intervene if necessary. Margaret felt tears threatening to spill as she fumbled through her purse for any other confirmation proof. "Please, I paid in advance. My husband is parking the car. He'll be here any moment," she pleaded softly. Ashley rolled her eyes and picked up the phone, whispering something about another confused elderly guest. The words stung Margaret deeply, making her feel invisible and worthless in this gleaming marble palace. She had never felt so small and insignificant, despite having lived through 72 years of life. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to step aside," the security guard said, approaching Margaret firmly. His hand gestured toward the exit as other guests watched the scene unfold, with mild curiosity or disdain. Margaret's cheeks burned with humiliation as she gathered her belongings with shaking, arthritic hands. "But I belong here. I have a reservation," she whispered, her voice cracking with emotion and disbelief. The guard's expression softened slightly, but his duty was clear as he guided her toward the glass doors. Through her tears, Margaret saw her reflection in the polished floor, a forgotten woman being erased. The automatic doors opened with a whoosh, expelling her into the harsh November wind of Michigan Avenue. Margaret stood on the sidewalk, her thin coat offering little protection against Chicago's biting wind. Tears streamed down her weathered cheeks as she watched taxis and luxury cars pass by indifferently. She thought of all those months of saving, skipping meals to afford this special anniversary surprise. Her husband, Robert, had been working extra shifts at the factory, unaware of her secret planning efforts. Now it was all ruined, and she felt like a fool for thinking she could belong in such a fancy place. A young couple emerged from the hotel, laughing carelessly as they stepped around her without acknowledgement. Margaret pulled her coat tighter, wondering how she would explain this humiliation to her beloved Robert. "Maggie, sweetheart, what are you doing out here?" Robert's familiar voice cut through her despair suddenly. She turned to see her husband of 50 years walking toward her, concern etched across his kind face. Robert Wilson looked like any other 75-year-old man in his simple khaki pants and windbreaker. His gray hair was neatly combed, and his blue eyes sparkled with the same love she'd known for decades. "Oh, Robert," she sobbed, falling into his arms as the emotional dam finally broke completely open. He held her gently, stroking her silver hair while pedestrians streamed around them on the busy sidewalk. "Tell me what happened, love. Whatever it is, we'll face it together like we always have," he soothed, Between sobs, Margaret explained the humiliation she'd endured inside the prestigious Grandview Hotel lobby. Robert's expression darkened with each detail, his jaw clenching as she described the receptionist's cruelty. They wouldn't even check properly. They just dismissed me like I was nothing, Margaret whispered painfully. His weathered hands cupped her face gently, wiping away the tears with his calloused thumbs tenderly. You are everything to me, Maggie. Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise, he said with fierce conviction. Margaret saw something change in his eyes, a determination she hadn't seen in many years of marriage. Wait here, sweetheart. I need to make a phone call, he said, pulling out a phone she didn't recognize. Robert walked a few steps away, dialing a number with practiced ease that surprised his watching wife. Margaret couldn't hear the conversation, but she noticed his posture straighten with unusual authority. His free hand gestured as he spoke, and she caught glimpses of an expression she'd rarely seen before. After several minutes, he ended the call and returned to her side with a mysterious slight smile. Come on, love, let's go get some coffee and warm up, he suggested, taking her trembling hand gently. But Robert, what about our anniversary? I ruined everything, Margaret said, fresh tears threatening to fall. He kissed her forehead softly and whispered, Trust me, Maggie. This anniversary isn't over yet, my dear. They found a small diner 2 blocks away, its warm lights and coffee aroma providing instant comfort. Robert ordered Margaret's favorite, hot chocolate with extra whipped cream, without needing to ask her. As they sat in the worn vinyl booth, Margaret studied her husband's face with growing curiosity and wonder. Robert, whose phone is that? And who are you calling? She asked, nodding toward the device on the table. He smiled mysteriously, stirring sugar into his coffee with the same hands that had held hers for decades. Maggie, there's something I've never told you about my past, he began, his voice gentle but serious now. Margaret's eyes widened as she leaned forward, forgetting her hot chocolate in anticipation of his revelation. Before I met you, I wasn't just working in factories, Robert said, his blue eyes meeting hers steadily. I built a business, sweetheart, a successful one, but I walked away from it all when I found you. Margaret's mouth opened in shock as he continued his incredible confession after 50 years of marriage. I didn't want money to define our love. I wanted you to love me for me, not for what I could buy you. Her mind raced through memories of their simple life, the small house, modest vacations, careful budgeting. But why, Robert? Why live so modestly all these years? She asked, struggling to process this revelation. He reached across the table, taking her hands in his with the same tenderness as their wedding day. Because you taught me what really mattered in life, Robert said, his voice thick with emotion and truth. Every moment with you was worth more than any business deal or fancy hotel suite could ever be. Love? Margaret felt tears again, but this time they were tears of overwhelming love and understanding for him. I kept my share of the company as a silent partner, letting others run it while we lived our life. The waitress refilled their cups, unaware of the momentous conversation happening in her small diner. Grandview Hotels is one of many chains I helped establish before I met you, he revealed quietly to her. Margaret's hot chocolate sat forgotten as the magnitude of his words slowly sank into her shocked mind. You mean, you own part of the hotel that just... Margaret couldn't finish the sentence, too stunned to speak. Robert's expression hardened slightly as he nodded, anger flashing in his usually gentle blue eyes now. Not just part of it, Maggie. I own enough to make some significant changes, he said with determination. He pulled out the phone again, showing her a series of emails already flooding the screen with responses. I've called an emergency board meeting for tonight. Things are about to change at Grandview Hotels. Margaret watched in awe as her humble factory worker husband transformed into someone entirely different. But I don't want you to be someone you're not, she said softly. touching his weathered face gently. "I'm still the same man who fell in love with you at that church social 52 years ago," Robert assured. "But I won't stand by while anyone treats my wife with such disrespect," he added with fierce protectiveness. His phone buzzed with incoming calls, but he ignored them all, focusing entirely on Margaret's comfort. "Tell me what you want, Maggie. We can leave right now and celebrate somewhere else if you prefer that." Margaret thought about the months of planning, the excitement she'd felt about staying at the Grand Hotel. "I just wanted one special night in a beautiful place for our anniversary," she admitted with honesty. Robert stood up, pulling out his wallet to pay for their coffee and hot chocolate with crisp $50 bills. "Then that's exactly what you'll have, my love," he promised, helping her into her coat with gentle care. As they walked back toward the hotel, Margaret noticed Robert's entire demeanor had shifted completely now. He walked with purpose and confidence she'd only glimpsed in rare moments throughout their long marriage. "Robert, are you sure about this? I don't want to cause trouble," she said, squeezing his strong hand. He stopped on the sidewalk, turning to face her with an expression of absolute love and determination. "Maggie, you've given me 50 years of joy. Let me give you this one night," he said passionately to her. She nodded, trusting the man who had never let her down in 5 decades of marriage and partnership. The Grandview Hotel looked different as they approached it for the second time that cold November evening. 3 black town cars were parked outside, and men in expensive suits hurried through the glass doors. The same security guard who had escorted Margaret out now stood at attention, his face pale with worry. "Mr. Wilson, sir, I had no idea. I'm so terribly sorry," he stammered as they approached the entrance together. Robert ignored him, keeping his arm protectively around Margaret as they entered the marble lobby again. The transformation inside was immediate and striking. Staff members lined up, looking nervous and ashamed. Ashley, the receptionist, stood behind the desk with tears streaming down her perfectly made-up face now. A distinguished man in an Italian suit rushed forward, extending his hand toward Robert with obvious respect. "Robert, it's been too long. I'm horrified about what happened. Please accept my deepest apologies to you both." Margaret recognized him from the business magazines. Thomas Brennan, CEO of Grandview Hotels International. "Tom, I'd like you to meet my wife, Margaret," Robert said formally, his tone carrying unmistakable warning. Brennan bowed slightly to Margaret, his expression genuinely contrite as he addressed her directly now. "Mrs. Wilson, I cannot express how sorry I am for the inexcusable treatment you received at our hotel today." Margaret felt overwhelmed by the sudden shift from invisible nobody to the center of everyone's attention. "The presidential suite has been prepared for you both," Brennan continued, signaling to the bell captain urgently. "That won't be necessary," Robert said coldly, his arm still protective around Margaret's trembling shoulders. The lobby fell silent as everyone waited to hear what the mysterious Robert Wilson would say next to them. "My wife made a reservation 3 months ago. She paid in advance. Honor that reservation first," he commanded. Ashley scrambled at the computer, her fingers flying across the keyboard with desperate efficiency now. "Found it, sir. Mrs. Wilson's reservation for the Heritage Suite. It was overlooked," she said, voice shaking. Robert's expression remained stern as he surveyed the assembled staff with disappointment clear in his eyes. "How many other reservations have been overlooked because guests didn't look wealthy enough?" he asked pointedly. The question hung in the air like an accusation, making several staff members shift uncomfortably in place. Margaret watched as her humble husband commanded the room with quiet authority she'd never witnessed before. "As of tonight, there will be significant changes in how Grandview Hotels treats all guests," Robert announced. He turned to Ashley specifically, who seemed to shrink under his steady, disapproving gaze upon her. "Young lady, you'll be retrained in customer service, starting with learning every guest deserves respect here. If you cannot embrace that principle, you'll need to find employment elsewhere, he stated firmly to her. Brennan nodded vigorously, already making notes on his phone about the immediate changes Robert demanded. Furthermore, I want a complete review of all policies regarding guest treatment and staff training programs. Robert's voice carried through the lobby as more employees gathered to witness this unprecedented scene unfold. Every employee, from housekeeping to management, will undergo sensitivity training, he continued authoritatively. Margaret tugged gently on his sleeve, whispering, "Robert, that's enough. Let's just go to our room now, please." His expression softened immediately as he looked down at his wife with infinite tenderness and pure love. "Of course, my love. This is your night," he said, his commanding presence melting back to gentleness again. As they walked toward the elevator, staff members parted respectfully, some offering genuine apologies to Margaret. The bell captain personally escorted them, carrying their modest luggage with exaggerated care and attention. In the elevator, Margaret finally spoke what was on her mind. "Robert, are you really buying the entire chain?" He smiled, the businessman facade dropping away to reveal the man she'd loved for 50 years completely. "I already own 40%, sweetheart. But yes, I'm buying the rest," he confirmed with quiet satisfaction. "Not out of anger or revenge, but because you were right. This place needs to remember what hospitality means." Margaret leaned against him, feeling like she was in a dream as the elevator rose to their floor steadily. The Heritage Suite was everything Margaret had imagined when she'd saved for months to book this special room. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered breathtaking views of the Chicago skyline glittering in the cold night air. Champagne waited in a silver bucket, surrounded by roses and chocolates, arranged with meticulous care now. "Oh, Robert," she breathed, walking slowly through the luxurious space she'd dreamed about for so long here. He watched her with the same adoration he'd shown on their wedding day, 50 years ago, in that small church. "Is it everything you hoped for, Maggie?" he asked, genuinely concerned only with her happiness and comfort tonight. She turned to him with tears of joy streaming down her face, nodding as emotion overwhelmed her completely. Then, they stood together by the windows, watching the city lights twinkle below them like earthbound stars tonight. "I have a confession too," Margaret said softly, reaching into her purse for something she'd hidden carefully there. She pulled out a small wrapped box, handing it to Robert with hands that trembled with emotion and anticipation. "I've been saving for more than just this hotel room," she admitted as he carefully opened her special gift to him. Inside was a simple gold watch, engraved with, "50 years of time well spent. Forever yours, Maggie." Robert's eyes filled with tears as he read the inscription, understanding the sacrifice behind this precious gift. "You skipped lunches for this, didn't you?" he asked, knowing his wife's selfless nature after all these years. Margaret nodded, suddenly shy about her modest gift compared to the grandeur surrounding them in the suite now. "It's perfect," Robert said, immediately replacing his old watch with the new one she'd given him with love. "Just like you, Maggie. Absolutely perfect in every way," he added, pulling her into a gentle embrace. Then they danced slowly by the windows, no music needed except the rhythm of their synchronized heartbeats together. "I'm sorry I kept secrets from you," Robert whispered into her silver hair as they swayed together gently now. "I'm not," Margaret replied, surprising him with her response and the firmness in her voice as she spoke to him. "You chose love over money. That makes me the richest woman in the world," she said with absolute certainty. As they prepared for bed in the luxurious suite, Margaret reflected on the extraordinary day they'd shared together. The humiliation at the front desk seemed like a distant memory now, overshadowed by Robert's fierce love for her. "Tomorrow, you can teach them about hospitality," she said, watching him hang up his simple windbreaker carefully. But tonight, let's just be Robert and Maggie from Oak Park, celebrating 50 years, she suggested softly to him. He smiled, crossing the room to take her hand in his, the new gold watch gleaming on his wrist in the lamplight. That's all I've ever wanted to be, sweetheart. Just your Robert, he said, kissing her weathered hand gently. And in that moment, in the grandest suite of the hotel he now owned, they were simply two people in love forever.